Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Rocky Mountain Sabres virtual monthly gathering. Yeah, I guess you can still call it a luncheon because Kurt is definitely well into his lunch, and we do have our old friend and former Rocky Mountain Sabre board member joining us today, and we're anxiously waiting to hear his thoughts on a variety of things. But before that, I just wanted to make an announcement that you've all hopefully have already seen in an email to membership. Next month in June, we are going to have be holding our first in-person monthly luncheon, chapter luncheon, in I think a year and a quarter. I think the last one was February. Boy, it's been a long time, but it's going to be Thursday, June 17. Please make a note of that. It's not our traditional third Wednesday because the Rockies have a home day game on Wednesday, the 16th. So we bump it back a day. So Thursday, June 17th will be our in-person monthly lunch at the Blake Street Tavern, our old friends. And I received from Shelley, the general manager, the latest update on their protocols. And they have 100% capacity they're allowed to do. And as long as people are vaccinated, there are no restrictions on distancing or masking. Of course, I would, I mean, it almost goes without saying, but I would encourage people, if you're thinking of attending that, to be vaccinated, or I would just strongly encourage you to do that. I know there's various reasons that people choose not to do that. And I think some people may be masked for their comfort level. Please remember, if you know, make sure, check with your comfort level, your own comfort level in terms of joining this gathering, because it's, you know, we're coming out into a kind of a brave new world. And but anyway, I just wanted to make note of that. We're focused on Thursday, June 17th, Blake Street Tavern, and we're getting our old tailgate room back. So
do we
yes.
have to present a vaccine card? Of course, this is Nicolette. I have to be difficult.
Yes, I'm well aware of that. Yeah.
Thanks, Paul.
Well, go ahead.
I just don't know if we have to present a vaccine card showing we're vaccinated.
No, as a matter of fact, I was at the Blake Street Tavern recently, and they have a sign out there saying what their new protocols are. And at the bottom of the sign, they wrote honor system. So they're not checking for vaccine cards. They're hoping that people will be truthful and candid in their vaccination status.
Thank you. I just wondered.
Okay. Thank you, Doctor. Anybody else have any questions, concerns about June 17? Okay. Well.
Regular noon time?
Noon, yes, noon. And you can come early, you know, they'll probably open the doors at 11, and it'll be nice to, boy, it's going to be nice to see everybody again. You know, it's been a long time, Okay, we're lucky enough to have as a guest today, the great Thomas Harding. He has been, I won't belabor your intro too long, but he has been an MLB.com beat writer on the Rockies, I believe since 2001. I know you'll correct me here on the dates, but he's been a longtime Rockies follower. And I am hoping that this will be, in some way, shape, or form, this might be a mid-May or late May State of the Rockies address. We did a virtual one with Zach Rosenthal last November, and the Rockies world has changed since November. So I just want to say welcome, Thomas. Thank you. And I'm going to just, it's, well, as we talked last week, this is your blank canvas. So welcome, Thomas. It's all yours.
Hey, thanks for having me, everyone. And I can't wait till next month. I will do my best to be there for the actual meeting. I was telling everybody, for the guys who were on earlier before we got started, that I, like probably the rest of us, am so sick of Zoom meetings. I love seeing you on Zoom, but I'd like to see people in person. I've doing the interviews on Zooms. It's gotten to the point to where not only do the reporters hate it, but the teams hate it, and even the players hate it. So they're actually happy to see us. And I never thought I'd be saying that players were happy to see reporters. So that's good. I do want to just answer a bunch of questions about the Rockies. And this is interesting because a lot of the people that haven't been around here in a long time, they're very upset with what's going on with the Rockies, and they think this is new. It seems like this is about my fourth cycle of this with this team. And I think if I were to talk to reporters that cover teams in small to mid markets, and sometimes we forget that we are one of those, there are cycles like this all the time. I mean, things are very extreme here, and a lot of it has to do with the environment in which the team plays. But it's, I've seen this before, so a lot of times I like covering a team that is in a rebuilding stage. And I think the Rockies tried to deny that for a long time, or at least they went into one and didn't tell anybody. And I believe that was a major mistake. And you hope it never happens again. They need to be better with their messaging. Watching the team on the field, there are some, I'm sure you guys have a lot of questions about where this thing is heading. I'm obviously not watching a finished product. If you look around the field, other than Charlie Blackmon, CJ Cron, and Trevor Story, there are guys at various early stages of their careers. I think Ryan McMahon is a bit above that. He is a guy who's entering into a period where he could become a star. The rest of them, they're trying to find out who they are actually. You look at the bullpen, that's the case. The starting rotation actually is pretty solid, but the rest of it, this is a team that if you look at them, they're trying to figure out who's still going to be a part of it when they get to the point that they can win some ball games. So actually, I'd like to just open it early to questions because everybody has questions about the Rockies, and I know all of you are just watching and you're fans of the team.
Well, we'll let Alex coordinate that as people. You want to just
you want to unmute everybody, Paul, or just have people raise their hand electronically?
Well, what are we at 19? I think we can take a chance here, and if everybody promises to behave, to unmute everybody.
I'm going to ask everyone to all unmute themselves, but let certain individuals, if you have some background noise, if you could keep yourself muted, that would be great.
Okay.
Okay, yeah, I'm open for anything. I feel like a relief pitcher. I'm just waiting for the phone call down to the bullpen.
I have a question. Thomas, what would Jim Tracy say about all of this? I mean, it's such an insane situation here in Colorado, and I think Jim would have a lot to say about this. What would you say? And please do this in Jim Tracy's voice. Thank you.
Well, I would think these young men trying to get to the point to where they're competing for a championship during the championship season of the National League West Division. They're just receiving their opportunity there, Manny Randhawa. I mean, if you look at this team, say a Brendan Rodgers, there's nothing more he can learn at the AAA level. If he goes there and dominates, what difference does it make? He's got to be here among the major leaguers in the clubhouse with a Trevor Story and a Charlie Blackmon. And he's got to be facing guys like Walker Buehler during the championship season in the National League West Division. There we go.
Wow.
Nice.
Well done.
You just raised the entertainment value of this call quite a bit. So.
If that's raised the entertainment value, then I'd hate to see where it actually was.
Douglas, you had a question?
I did. Thanks, Alex. Hi, Thomas. This isn't exactly about the Rockies, but it's a question that I hope some other people have too. I'd like you to briefly describe a day in the life of Thomas Harding. You know, what time you get to the ballpark, what you do when you get there, how late you stay, and how you put your stories together and that kind of thing. Can you walk us through that?
Sure, I could, and especially how you put the stories together is unique because of where the home games are. But let's take it out of the pandemic, okay? Because in the pandemic, like I say, I'm about to talk to Josh Fuentes 4 hours and 10 minutes before a game starts. That doesn't happen for road games. So the clubhouse at home opens 4 hours before the game. On the road, 3.5 before the game. And when players are available at their locker, you can talk to them, or even on the field during batting practice. And what's happening is a lot of the notebooks, the things that I put up as in-game reading, that's gathered before the game. And there's a lot of strategy involved in that, and that it's very, I keep my fingers crossed if I talk to a relief pitcher, because let's face it, that guy who I'm writing a nice story about could come into the game and blow things up. If I generally avoid certain stories that become dead once the game begins. So I do like to have something up before/during the game, because I think that people that are following along would like to have that. Everybody in the stands, they have their cell phones. You have netting up all the way around, all the way to the foul line, so you can read me during the game. It's fine. So that's kind of the start of it. And then obviously the game begins. Usually I have a deadline before the game. Sometimes I miss that deadline, okay? And, you know, I'm still writing when the game begins. But I do like to have that cleared. The early portion of the game, now I participate less on Twitter than I ever had, because I have a job to do. And I've found that a lot of the back and forth, some of it gets a little bit nasty with people. I find that doesn't help me do my job. So I have a reason that I'm there, and I try to stay with the reason to promote my stories. I've been given permission, tacitly, I guess. It's still kind of up in the air legally, to put up some big plays, like the video of big plays, like after McMahon's home run and his fielding play last night, which is one of the better ones I've seen, because a bare hand from that far with the ball coming at that speed, you just don't see that a lot. But I can put up those during the game. If I am having some discussion, or if I am doing some writing, anything, I try to end it around the 6th inning. I really don't like to banter with people at that point, because I'm thinking of the stories that I have. The second the game is over, I have a deadline. That story needs to be in the hands of my producer, who's the editor. That person is editing both teams' stories there. So I have to have a quick story in there, but I've already planned out the full story after the game. I'll do the interviews after the game, and then extend out my stories. And you find out, sometimes you find news after the game, and sometimes you find out something that really changes your story. Our deadline is roughly 90 minutes after a game. Actually, there's been a caveat to that, because Charlie Blackmon spends 45 minutes lifting weights, stretching in the hot tub, whatever it is he does. So we have a Charlie Blackmon deadline, where if he is the story, they give us a little bit of extra time there. It's kind of a cool little thing that some of the editors have done for me. So after that, after I'm done, I actually start planning the next day. Those pregame stories, I want to have an idea of what I'm going to do when I walk out of the park that particular day. So that is a normal game day for me. I like the part of going down and interviewing after games, and sometimes I have more than one story in mind. The stuff before the game, sometimes I am planning something that is a more extended story at a later date. So what you're doing is you're working on that day, but you also have a mind, you have your mind toward what's coming up. Other deadlines that you have for other stories, or other stories that you kind of self-assign and you plan. I always think that the stories that you come up with on your own are better than the ones that someone gives you. So that's an idea of the way my day goes.
And how late after the game do you get out of the ballpark?
Well, that deadline is 90 minutes after, so I would guess 2 hours, 15 minutes after a game, then I walk out of there. Yeah, it's funny. I remember my sister saying, "So your job is just to watch a game and write about it." It's like, oh. But there's a lot more to that, and it takes more time than one would think. But let's face it, it's not exactly like I'm, like I'm working construction or anything like that.
Cool. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's great insight.
I'd like to maybe segue here a little bit. And I'm a regular reader of the Denver Post, and I enjoy Patrick Saunders' work every day. But and I don't know if this might come under professional courtesy for you, but I was reading. Patrick didn't write yesterday, but a gentleman by the name of Kyle Fredrickson, I assume you're acquainted with, and
Yes.
Kyle Newman, two Kyles.
Right.
Well, Kyle Fredrickson. And feel free, I mean, and this may be fair or unfair, but I'm wondering about his homework here. In his story, he said, predictably, the bullpen faltered and Colorado generated only 3 hits. He's talking about last night's game. 3 hits as the Mets earned a 3-1 victory. And then his next paragraph, it said, it snapped the Rockies' 4-game winning streak. Colorado, 19-30, and New York, 22-20, meet again on Wednesday night to decide the series. And what immediately strikes me is he didn't even look at the schedule, because tonight's game doesn't decide the series. It's 1-1. It's a 4-game series.
Well,
Right.
I'll tell you, I won't comment on that because certainly I've made mistakes before, but maybe Manny can come in on this. Manny, in his job, at times he has to cover the opposing team that comes in, and he's filling in for the full-time beat writer. Like during the weekend, he covered the Cincinnati Reds. And what we do as reporters who cover a team is we give detailed instructions to the person sitting in for us to try to get them as up to speed as they can be, not only on the team, but on who talks, who doesn't, on their patterns for access before games, on everything there is. But I think that what you mentioned, probably he assumed it was a 3-game series and forgot it was 4. Hey, people do that. People make mistakes. They do. But I think Manny could probably come in and talk about jumping in to cover a team that maybe you don't normally cover. I think Fredrickson does a lot of, if I'm not mistaken, the high school coverage. And I know Kyle Newman does some Broncos coverage, but he also fills in on Rockies. But Manny, you follow the Rockies, but yet you're writing about the league, and a lot of times you'll find out, hey, I'm covering the Cincinnati Reds or the Atlanta Braves or whatever. So Manny, you want to come in, say something?
Yeah, sure. I hope you guys can hear me okay. I'm not gonna, I can't speak to this person. I don't know Mr. Fredrickson, is it? I don't
Fredrickson,
know
yeah.
who. I don't know him, but I made that mistake before. I mean, I've written. I'm on the national news desk for MLB.com, so I mean, I'm writing stories about you name it, and then sometimes I cover the beat for other guys who are on vacation or whatever, like Thomas mentioned, and so. It's one of those that we all make mistakes. I think I would, if I saw something where it was just something that betrayed your own baseball knowledge, you know what I mean? That's a schedule. I mean, that's schedule. That's logistics. But I mean, so if I saw something that betrayed a person's lack of baseball knowledge, I think that would probably be where I would say, okay, well, maybe this person, isn't maybe necessarily best for what he's doing in this play. Plus, a lot in our industry, a lot of people are. I mean, a lot of outlets are just stretched thin, So, I doing homework is very important, especially in a game that is as statistically driven as baseball. But I think that I wouldn't be able to say one way or the other about this guy if he quote unquote didn't do his homework or not. But the key is that what's your knowledge base? How much do you have there? A lot of it is study up, research. I have to do that on every team I cover. But you also have to if you're not a baseball person, you're not a baseball fan, it's going to be difficult for you. I'll just say that.
I will say that a lot of times I will parachute in on a playoff series, and what I like is to receive that, and this is something that maybe Manny doesn't have the luxury of. I like to receive that assignment a few days before the end of the season. Say, hey, you're going to be on whatever team. So I will follow that team the way I'll follow the Rockies. I also have a lot of sources in scouting. I have a lot of people that have been with those teams or people who work for those teams, and I will call upon them. So if I parachute in on a playoff series, then I feel like I'm up to date. Earlier parts of my career, I was more general assignment. I could be covering the University of Tennessee football one game. I could be the next day at a University of Memphis basketball game or at a high school event. So you learn this, and this is something that I think I hope the business continues to do, is that when you're younger, and it doesn't do as much anymore. A lot of times you'll see some very young people that are very talented get beats immediately. I mean, I'll mention, and hopefully she'll be a part of SABR at some point, Danielle Allentuck. She's joined the Gazette, which is the Denver Gazette / Colorado Springs Gazette. She's their Rockies reporter, the first one since I left after the 2000, I think, one season. She's their first beat reporter, but she's very young in the business and very talented. Now, when I was that young, I was covering every level of the minor leagues on the way up. I covered high schools. I covered some professional football. I covered professional every sport that there was. Covered colleges, and I think it gave me a pretty good knowledge base of how to jump in on a beat.
If I may have one other question, it's about Kyle Newman's column. I just want your thoughts on this. It's not a criticism, but he suggests a 5-step action plan for the rebuilding the Rockies. And number one is trade Trevor Story. Number 2 is nail the 2021 draft. Number 3 is hire a new president. And 4 is hire an external GM. 5 is re-sign John Gray. But it's 3 and 4 I'd like you to comment on, if you would. About hiring a new president. Now, Manny just mentioned, he kind of used the magic phrase about being a baseball fan. And Greg Fiesel is now the president of the ball club. And by his own admission, and I've heard him say it, at meetings, he is not a baseball fan. And most of us here know that Greg's background is was in football. He was a professional football player, and then he went to work for Coca-Cola, and he comes out at the Rockies from a corporate and business point of view, from corporate angle. So what is your thoughts about naming Mr. Fiesel president of the club after an 11-year hiatus of not officially having a club president? And then if you, as a follow-up, the new GM, who's that going to be? Is it going to be internal, external? So there you go.
I'll tell you what I can do. I can wrap those questions into one answer here. First, I don't have a problem with Greg Fiesel being the president of the team because of his business background. And a lot of times that person is the person out in the community. Now, you could have a president that is a great public speaker, and a lot of teams have that. I think the Arizona Diamondbacks with Derek Hall, someone who really can kind of go out to the various, whether it's civic organizations or corporate events, and talk up your club. What Greg Fiesel does very well is establish business relationships. I have no problem with that whatsoever. However, this is where the general manager thing comes in, is that if they don't, and I brought this up to Greg before, I brought it up to other people with the Rockies, and they've said, this just happened, we haven't made any decisions yet. You've got to hire 2 people. There's got to be a vice president on the baseball side. It could be a president of baseball or a vice president of baseball. I don't care what they call the job, but it's someone who I believe has been a general manager before or is a general manager type and can handle that. And then you hire a general manager for the day-to-day duties of a general manager. What happens is if you just have a general manager and an owner like they've had for the last, ever since the death of Kelly McGregor, that's not exactly an even discussion. They're sitting in the room. One guy has the money, one guy has the baseball. It's one guy's opinion versus the guy with the money. And I think that that's not healthy. I think having two guys who are managing the money and one guy with baseball is not healthy. I would love to see a general manager and a president type to where before they go into the room, they can discuss things from a baseball perspective. And then when they go in with the people with the money, they can kind of meld that, and there are two voices talking to the people that are handling the money. If you look at a lot of teams, like for example, the Cubs, I believe, when Theo Epstein was their guy, he was kind of a vice president of baseball operations, and I think then they had a general manager underneath him. I think that's a healthier way to do it because it's the owner's money. And the owner is not going to spend any more than what his market gives, okay? You could bring in a new owner for the Colorado Rockies, but the fact of the matter is this place will have a certain payroll model and it'll hover at a certain level. And then if they're good, they may jump and try to make a trade or try to make a big signing at some point, okay? So the finances here are never going to change no matter who owns the team, and whoever owns the team has the right to set the finances. Now, do they need an external general manager? I think if they got a president that has been a general manager and he's really in charge of it, I do believe you need to go outside and get that person. One of the things I'm finding as I talk to people around the Rockies is they feel like the people that they have are good people. It's just that under Jeff Bridich, things really got awry there. I mean, obviously, he was not, according to the people there, he was not the best personality to work with, and it got in the way with a number of things with the operation. So I believe that if it was an internal general manager, whether it's the personnel guy John Weil who deals with other teams a lot, whether it's Bill Schmidt who is operating as the interim general manager, it seems like his first duty is to get everybody internally on the same page before they can really go out and have credibility with other teams trying to make these trades here. So I don't mind if the general manager is internal as long as they get someone who's done it before. I remember, I've told the story a number of times when Jeff Bridich got the job, and I heard this from others that had been in the business, is that he needed to hire someone, or the Rockies needed to, at that point, get their president or vice president of baseball operations. They needed to hire somebody like a Jim Hendry or one of the Duquettes who had done this before. And I remember asking Jeff, does he need that guy? And my analogy was the Stephen Hill character in Law and Order. You know, the old guy saying, go ahead, make the deal, make it go away. So I asked Jeff that once, and he said that we haven't come to that conclusion. I asked him that again, and he kind of got upset with me. He asked, do I get a bonus every time I ask that question? But I feel like that's what kind of proved out. They needed somebody who'd been a general manager before, because you took Jeff Bridich from farm director, where he really hadn't had to deal with other teams, and threw him into a general manager position. And ultimately, that may not have been the fairest thing in the world for the Rockies to do.
So if I can follow up with that, so if Greg Fiesel remains the president of the ball club, whoever becomes a general manager, or as you suggest, perhaps a president or vice president of baseball operations, whoever that is, internally or externally, they're still going to be reporting to Greg Fiesel, who does not have a real background in baseball. And
there are a lot of people who don't have a real background in baseball who are club presidents out there. A lot of them have a business background, and what they need to be able to do is listen to the baseball people. And sometimes they have to say, listen, we don't have the money for this. Come back with a better idea. I don't have a problem with that. I mean, Kelly McGregor played in the National Football League, and he was I think an assistant athletic director at the University of Arkansas. A lot of those things.
Right.
I don't think he was a baseball guy like other people are baseball guys. And if you look at it, he did make some very good baseball decisions, as in he convinced Dan O'Dowd and Clint Hurdle and the ownership that going out and signing Mike Hampton and Danny Nagel for a lot of money will set your organization back. Should someone else have been in the room when they decided to sign Nolan Arenado for $260 million, knowing that they had made mistakes with free agents at other places. Maybe they should have traded Nolan at that point and begun a quick rebuild as opposed to what could be a long and painful rebuild. I have my thoughts about how this team could be built quicker than it was rebuilt under Kelly McGregor back then, but I don't think they've interviewed me for general manager or baseball vice president yet.
They're lost.
I would actually like to be able to present those ideas. I'll present them at some point because I frankly already have. I think that some of the trades that they need to make, the Trevor Story trade does need to happen. I've believed most of the year that a John Gray trade needs to happen. I'm not so sure now, but I keep coming back to the money. John Gray's probably going to make somewhere in the neighborhood of $7 million a year because he's a free agent coming up. I've talked to people with other teams that are watching him, and they haven't really gotten to the point because the season hasn't solidified. Do we trade for him? What they're watching is next winter, when it comes time to spend those $7 million, is John Gray the one we need to give it to? There are contending teams that are watching every pitch that he throws. So are the Rockies at the point to where they could pay him $7 million a year and knowing that maybe they have a chance to keep Kyle Freeland long-term? Can they do that on two pitchers and still fill out the rest of the roster? So those are the questions that they need to answer now. I'm probably leading more toward trading John Gray, but when you look around the industry, they're watching, trying to figure it out. And John Gray's numbers look like he pitches quite well in Denver, Colorado, and not as well elsewhere.
But Thomas, to that point, I think you have to start taking consideration who John Gray is right now, which is a Colorado Rockies pitcher that's approaching 30 years old with maybe, and I know people probably in the organization might not like to talk about this, but he might be approaching his Coors expiration date. I mean, all those starts at Coors at altitude, going back and forth. I mean, to me, I think that's a no-brainer. I think John Gray is a much better trade candidate than Trevor Story at this point because he's more valuable as a starting pitcher.
There is value. I think that on a very good team at the back of a rotation, and also say in a playoff, he's a strike thrower. So if he's not in your playoff rotation, you go to him when the starter struggles. So there's some value there. With Trevor Story, the question, I think he can get you back more in a trade. But the question has to be, which team that's a contending team that thinks it could win a World Series needs a shortstop? It's hard finding those teams, but if you look, the New York Yankees, they could fall into the category. What happens if the Milwaukee Brewers, with their pitching, they go on a big run? They could fall into that category. I think that the best team to trade them to when I look out there is the St. Louis Cardinals. And I would love to be part of that discussion. I mean, I would pick up the phone, I would call them and say, hey, listen, guys, we had to do a salary dump. We didn't take very many of you good players because we needed to get rid of that Nolan Arenado money. I think the more I looked at that trade, the more that they had to do it no matter what they got back. But they say, we did you a favor here. We didn't take everybody that you have. But all those names that came up in the Nolan trade, we could trade you Trevor Story. Let's start talking about Nolan Gorman. Let's start talking about Liebertor, the pitcher, and see if they could make a deal that way. I think that there would be multiple teams also in a Trevor Story sweepstakes. One of the problems with the Nolan Arenado trade is, and from asking around, the St. Louis Cardinals were the only team that wanted to make that trade, and it all came down to his contract. It wasn't that no one thought that Nolan Arenado was a great player. It was the contract. I mean, even the New York Mets, who I'm convinced, and I've been sort of whispered to about it, not to the point that I would have written a breaking news story, but they looked at Trevor Story and Francisco Lindor. I do know for a fact they did not call about Nolan Arenado.
I know, but who wants Trevor Story against us in the National League? I vote send him to the Yankees because nobody at shortstop can hold on to the ball. You know, it'd be kind of nice to see a little run support by everybody that falls apart. And, you know, I kind of bleed blue and purple. So I'd say send him to the Yankees or to the Mets to give him a chance. But, you know, National League, don't put him in the
Can't
National
hear
League.
I don't think it.
Good.
I don't think it matters. I mean, when I saw Corey Seager get hurt, I started thinking Dodgers. Actually, there was talk during the winter that the Rockies would not make a deal with the Dodgers. I don't believe that to be true. The issue was, although there were some reports that said that there were talks, there were never any talks between the Rockies and the Dodgers, because the Dodgers knew that the Rockies would ask for basically everything they have in a very good farm system. And the Dodgers weren't willing to do that. But if a World Series is on the line and Corey Seager is hurt, they may be willing to part with some people. I think if you're the Rockies, and I've really paid a lot of attention to their farm system, because I don't go in for the Baseball America pipeline rankings as my gauge for a farm system. I look at the needs of the big league level and what you have there. And what you're looking at in the farm system is some really usable parts, not as much at the upper part of the system. The lower part of the system is a lot better than people think. And I do, when I do that, I think about back in the early 2000s when you had Brad Hopp come in and Clint Barmas and Ryan Spilborghs. They were usable parts on a major league team if you weren't going to spend a whole lot of money. I'm starting to see that down there, and I'm actually starting to see pitching that's a little bit better than that at the lower parts of their system. But they could really jumpstart their rebuild if they were able to trade a Trevor Story or a John Gray and get people that are major league ready. Get another Herman Marquez, whether that's a position player or a pitcher, somebody that's ready within a year to step in and be part of your major leagues. I think that they could jumpstart their rebuilding that way.
Hey guys, my candidate is Dan Evans for president of the Rockies.
I would like that. I mean, because what he is, when you look for a president / vice president of baseball operations, you want someone that's been a GM. You want someone that's worked in a whole lot of different markets and worked on some situations that aren't normal. I mean, the Los Angeles Dodgers weren't a normal situation. They were a team that maybe I think their farm system had come upon some hard times, and they were trying to win a World Series at that time, and he helped rebuild that. There was some confusion within that organization. He helped fix that. He worked for the Toronto Blue Jays, which they have a special issue of being in Canada, being in a different country when you go for players, for free agents, and you're spending money. That was a different situation. He's worked in the Pacific Rim there. We're looking for players. So there's some creativity in how you spend international money. So he would be a guy that I would like to see in that. And I think that just from dealing with him here, he's able to work with people very well. So if it's an internal general manager, if it's, I think he would walk in and really evaluate what they have. It's very easy to say, oh, they're losing, clean house. I'm not sure that you need to clean house. I think that that at times some institutional knowledge is a good thing, especially considering that some of these people were here when they went to the playoffs a couple of times, you know? I mean, it's not like everybody is an idiot around there. And so I would think Dan Evans would make some sense.
I couldn't agree with you more. I think Dan has got the whole package, and I agree 100% with what you're saying. If I was the Rockies, I'd try everything I can to pick them up. I don't think you can find a better president of baseball operations than Dan Evans in all of the major leagues.
Yeah, he would be a good one. He would be a very good one. I mean, and I'm starting to look out there and see who could be that type of guy. I think that you would have to have somebody, though, and the reason why Dan Evans' name would come up, the fact he lives here and he's watched this and he's scouted this team. He has scouted this team's system for trades. So he knows what they have and what they do not have. I do think that he would come in also and give some and listen and get some information on guys that maybe he hasn't lived with before and see how things work on the way up. There are some things I like about this team. I think that their pitching operation from the lower part of the minors all the way up is pretty good. They slow played some of the technology when it came to pitching, but I think they're on the right track with that. If you look at what happened with Kyle Freeland last season, Antonio Senzatella last season, that was a result of really buying into some of the technology that was involved there and getting the players to buy in, and it's worked out. From a starting pitching perspective, I think that there are things happening with Ryan Rollison. Didn't have a good AAA debut, but all those things tell me that the analytics on the pitching side is working out. Things need to be beefed up hitting wise, I think. I'm not sure, and they really won't talk that much about it. I think that they have a couple of good people there, but have they done enough with the analytics, with different things that you can do to help an individual hitter? Have they done enough on that in that respect? I think you could beef up some of the coaching situations at the minor league level. So I would like a knowledgeable baseball guy like a Dan Evans to kind of oversee this all, and there would be a general manager underneath him who could also deal with the other teams and maybe disagree a bit, and they can go back and forth. So when they go into the ownership meetings, when they go in with Greg Fiesel, who really is trying to manage Dick Monfort's money while Dick Monfort manages an entire business empire. I mean, I think that would be a healthy situation.
Thomas, I got a couple of thoughts and questions. One, and Manny, you might have insight too. I think the biggest potential problem with a guy like Dan Evans would be that they would want some autonomy that I'm not sure that the general manager had, although I understand that he had a limited background. I mean, to me, what you say about bringing in somebody from the outside, I think is critical. So then when I see that Bill Schmidt says, oh, I hope to be general manager, who is an internal guy, and I everything I've heard about him is good, but I think all of SABR people who are at a banquet knows he's not the big communicator externally that you need for this team. And I think well, wait, and that, so there's the 2 points, and then also interference by the owner. And to me, the biggest challenge the Rockies have is, will Dick Monfort and his one son, who wants to be on the baseball side, will a general manager, a qualified guy, take that if they're limited? If Dick would hire a good guy and step out of the way, other than, the money side, I think that's what's needed.
If I can say something about that, a lot of people, in the local baseball community here have voiced their desire to see Dick Monfort sell the team. And it's hard for me to foresee that happening, because Dick is in his late 60s now, but he does have 2 sons in their 30s who work for the team. One is in scouting and one is in on the corporate side. And Dick has said publicly about the Rockies being a family, multi-generational business. So unless, of course, you can't predict the future, but it's hard at this point to foresee the Monfort selling.
Well, I will say this. Selling the team is not the panacea here. Now, I think that Dick Monfort hiring the right people, and there's kind of a healthy discussion there, which is why I think there need to be 2 people atop the baseball operation. If Bill Schmidt wants to be the general manager, I would not disqualify him, because there's talk about him not communicating that much, but you got to remember he works in scouting where he has to communicate with his scouts. But some of the lower round picks, the Brad Hops, and some of the guys that have been that have turned out to be pretty good players. And I'm going to count Trevor Story in that, because while he was a 1st round pick, he was 45th overall. In scouting, a lot of times you don't give away a lot of secrets to other people. The scouting community really has a lot of respect for Bill Schmidt. So he's dealt with scouts from other teams. They know that he's not going to give away secrets in the scouting world. So I'm not going to disqualify him as the general manager, but I would say if you had a president of baseball operations that he could work under, imagine that, someone who's worked with other teams, maybe someone who's had some familiarity with the Rockies. I know that one of the names that's come up is Thad Levine in Minnesota. That team is not doing well right now, but he had a lot of familiarity with how things operate here, to where when he comes in, he knows how Dick Monfort operates. That may make some sense there. But anyhow, having a vice president of baseball with a general manager from within, I don't see that. I don't see a big problem with that. I'll go back to I'll go back to selling the team issue, or the Dick Monfort issue. There is not an owner who writes the checks that doesn't approve everything. Okay, they are hands-on when it comes to the big deals. Now, I have heard that Dick has been more hands-on with some of the smaller deals, but a lot of that had to do, I think, with he didn't hire enough in his baseball operation to where he could kind of divorce himself from some of those things. But he's going to be there. He's going to say, "This is your budget." The Rockies, if you look at where they are market-wise, they spend exactly where they are market-wise, except when they're going to be good. What happens, I've discussed this before, is if the Rockies, they're not going to spend money to make people come to the ballpark. And in fact, almost no one does that. And Major League Baseball really gets nervous if you just up your payroll when you've been a bad team, because they've seen that with the Marlins and a few other teams. What happens, whether it's the Rockies or the Royals, when they were good, they spent within their market means, and then when they got good, they made the moves after that. The Rockies, it didn't work out, but when Dick Monfort, he increased the payrolls after the 17 season and after the 18 season, after he knew that people were coming to the ballpark. And that's the way, if you own the Colorado Rockies, you have to operate. If you brought in another owner, that owner isn't going to reach into his own pocket and spend with the Yankees. They're going to spend based on what's here. The idea is having the right ideas from the right people internally.
We have a question from Chris Cohen. So this is probably directed for you, Thomas. Your thoughts on this? Now that Bill Schmidt has been named the interim GM for the Rockies, how likely do you think he is to step back into his old role, which is what you talked about as director of scouting, if he's passed over for the GM position?
He really enjoys scouting. I know he has said that he wants to be the general manager, and a lot of times, if you get that interim job, I mean, why go into it as a short timer? You know, you do the best you possibly can. I do know from dealing with him with the draft, and the draft has gone up and down a lot. And I'll address that here in a second. He really enjoys the draft. He enjoys getting out there and getting information on players. A lot of times the guys that are brought over in a trade or whatever, there are people that the Rockies have a lot of information on from when they were even teenagers. I mean, I go back to Herman Marquez, one of their biggest scouts in Venezuela, had coached him when he was 14 years old. And that's, if you're going to be a team operating in this, you have to work your information that way. I think he would go back to that. Now, one thing I want to say quickly about the draft. Here's where I think things have gone wrong. They have become totally dependent on the draft because they made poor decisions free agent wise, and they really couldn't work trades that may have been out there with some of their prospects when they were prospects. This is why I think the Trevor Story trade that has to happen is critical. Maybe the John Gray trade that has to happen, and like I say, I'm kind of open to him staying, but those things are critical because your draft is never going to give you everything you need. You look at the Los Angeles Dodgers, you say, yeah, it's a great farm system. The farm system can get to be great because you can spend money on Justin Turner and Mookie Betts and retain Clayton Kershaw for year upon year upon year, so that you're really filling a few holes there. You're not trying to run your team on guys that just come through your draft. The Rockies, if you look at what Tampa Bay has done, they will trade a young guy who is a starter or a guy who's a really good player. They will trade him to fill another hole if they have someone to come up behind him. And I think that the Rockies probably need to be more aggressive as a trading team than they are right now. And that would be something for a new GM and the new, hopefully a new president of baseball operations, which I really hope they do.
Hey, Thomas, could I ask you about, I know you spent a lot of time in the locker room prior to COVID with Nolan. And how do you think the atmosphere with the team is losing Nolan? Do you think his presence in the locker room is really missed? Or I've heard conflicting stories on this, on how much they're missing him, and just want your feedback, having been around him as much as you have.
Well, I think if it were the same team that got rid of Nolan, like there was a time way back, I guess, when the Rockies started trading some of their veteran players, but they had a lot of veteran players still in there. So that was something that pulled people in a whole lot of different directions. Here's what I think about the clubhouse here, at least the impressions that I'm getting from players at all ends of the spectrum, is that everybody knows who the Rockies are right now, and they're a team that it looks like they're building for a future season. Charlie Blackmon has become more or less a leader of those guys. I mean, in the past, he could really concentrate on his own routine and kind of be more self-contained. He is really reaching out to guys. Trevor Story is letting them in, you know, and he's also stepping up, and when things aren't right, he'll say a few things. The rest of the team, it's not that they don't miss Nolan. Obviously, they miss having a great player, but his not being there is allowing Ryan McMahon to play second base and third base. It's allowing Brendan Rodgers to finally get a chance. And you see Brendan Rodgers, and I said this on my video yesterday, he is really letting his personality come out. He doesn't feel like just a fill-in or a guy who's blocked. So you look around that field, a lot of those guys, yeah, they would love to have Nolan winning games for them, but let's face it, this is their chance to play in the major league. So as far as the atmosphere is concerned, you have a lot of guys that don't know any better, to be honest with you. And if you're going to build for a future year, that's what you want around.
Good point. Thank you.
How much time do we have for Thomas here?
About 4 minutes.
4 minutes.
Thomas, I have a question, non-Rockies oriented.
Yeah.
And it was based on a podcast I heard yesterday with Ken Rosenthal, bringing up a problem that I didn't exactly know existed to the extent he believes it's a problem. That has to do with substance use on the baseball by pitchers. Now, look, I think we all know that goes on and that it's been a problem, but he believes it's reached epic proportions. He also thinks that's part of the reason for the massive strikeout rate, and that it, in some ways, it is similar to drug use, the PEDs, in that pitchers almost feel like they have to do it, or else they're going to get left behind by guys that are getting a lot more spin rate on the ball because they're using tacky substances. And again, I didn't know that he believes it's almost a scandal, and then refers to Don Mattingly, who says the way the game is now is unwatchable because it's all homers, walks, and strikeouts. So
yeah, I do agree with Don Mattingly. What's that?
Comment on that?
Yeah, I agree with Don Mattingly that it's really hard to watch this game with the home runs, walks, strikeouts, and almost nothing else. The lack of movement on the bases. I do know that Major League Baseball has attempted a crackdown when it comes to I guess there's a new substance that you can't see, but I actually saw a picture of someone who put it on his fingers and held up a brick like this, and it didn't fall. Now, I don't know if that is being used. I go back and forth, frankly, on substance use, because a lot of times when you see a guy get hit with a pitch and get hit high in the face or whatever, the ball has slipped. So I really wish that they would come to some conclusion about what you can use for grip purposes and what is not okay if it creates more spin rate. I've always believed that, and I do know that at times they look the other way on pine tar on cold games, because, as I think it was Nolan once told me, you would rather have a pitcher use pine tar than on a cold night a pitch slip and hit you in the elbow or in the face. Now, I don't. If Ken is saying that foreign substances on the ball, is a problem, then it must be one, because he deals with people from all around the league, all around baseball. I think that there are a number of problems. I do think that some of what's going on in the minor leagues with experimentation, I'm all for it, because the lack of movement on the bases means lack of action. I would love to see the shifts limited, because there are some plays that are good baseball plays that are merely routine outs. Think about this. If you're able to loft the ball over the second baseman, that means if you're a left-handed hitter, you're strong enough to keep that ball fair. It's a good play. And there's a guy just standing there. Now, if you are able to loft it over there and that second baseman gets back there and makes a diving catch, it's an exciting play. The line drive up the middle. There's someone standing behind second base from the day you're 10 years old. You're looking to just hit that ball right up the middle. That hard line drive up the middle is the best thing you can do. You're taking one of the best athletic things you can do and turning it into a routine out. I think that, so when you see those two things happening, the hitters are kind of stuck. You know, you hit home, you try to lift the ball out of the ballpark, because, and I had this discussion on Twitter the other day. I know I'm running over, but I've got to say it. If you're a slugger and you bunt for a hit, wow, that's fine. That's beautiful. Okay. Now you don't really work on that much. So if you're a slugger and you try to bunt for a hit and you bunt it foul, then suddenly you've given away a strike. I think that, and you're not going to do it for 2 strikes. People say that it's so easy to bunt for a hit, but I've not seen that happen. I've seen people bunt for hits, but it's not 100% play there. So do you really want someone who he's forced to try to hit the ball over the fence because there really aren't any outs on good hitting plays to begin with? There really aren't hits in good hitting plays to begin with. And you want him to bunt where that may not be part of his game. And even the people who do it, I don't know what the percentage of successful square to bunt versus bunts actually getting down, much less getting a hit is. So I wouldn't mind seeing some limitations on the shift. I think that makes the game pretty unwatchable at that point. Now, the foreign substance, I'd like to know more about it. I'll just say that. I mean, I would think if I were pitching, I would put some pine tar on my glove and find a way to get away with it. I don't know about the new substances. I've read about them, but I would like to kind of test them.
Thomas, on the substances, because I love chemistry, I was just wondering other types of compounds they're using, and the structures. You know, that makes a difference, how they interact with the ball, how they interact with the substances, and I mean natural on the player's hand. And that's kind of, something that possibly could be tested, on the balls going out or the balls being touched, or, in the shift as well. With me, when I first saw 4 players in the outfield, I started counting people. I thought, oh my God, how are there 4 players in the outfield?
Yeah, I mean, like I say, I'm all for, if you can make a play on that, I would rather see a shortstop dash behind second base and dive into that play. I'd rather see a second baseman and a right fielder find a way to make that play without crashing into each other than just have people stand there. I mean, I don't want to watch math equations. I know some people do. I don't want to watch math equations. I will say this about the substances on the ball. This is my understanding. Unlike the old spitball where where the substance actually created the movement, what the substance is doing, and because those were slippery substances, what the modern substances are doing are giving you more tact to where you could really create the spin rate on the baseball. And I don't know a lot about them, and I would love to do it. And I'll tell you what, let me say, this is the shame when I get going, is that I can't stop. So back in the early 2000s, I had come up with an idea to work on a story of how pitchers cheat, okay? So I ran into George Frazier, and George Frazier loves it. I mean, he loves the idea of scuffing a baseball, and he was telling me different ways to do it. Like they talked about Whitey Ford, how
scratching the ball.
Yeah, what would happen is Nelson Howard would catch it, and as he went to throw it, he'd just scrape it against a little sharpened buckle on the shin guards and throw it back. And that's how it happened. So no one ever caught Whitey Ford doing it because the guy literally beside the umpire was the guy doing it for him. And there were other ideas and we were discussing it. So I'm excited about the story. I go up to the press box and I get my pregame meal. I buy my pregame meal and I sit down. The Rockies are about to play the Braves. And I sit down and someone says, Thomas, what story are you working on? And I'm like, I'm working on different ways that pitchers can scuff the ball, manipulate the ball, basically cheat and get the movement that they want. After I say that, I realize I'm sitting right across from Don Sutton, who had been accused his entire career of that. And he looks at me and I go quiet. The whole table goes quiet and Sutton looks at me and we talked about it later and I apologized, but excuse the language here. He just looks at me and goes, I don't know you well enough to call you an asshole, but I can work up to it. And I'm like, oh my gosh. I basically put my face in the food. I'm like, I can't believe, I'm sitting here talking about scuffing and probably the king of it is sitting right across from me.
I thought you were going to bring up you may be familiar with George Fraser, the story he tells when he was pitching and he got caught doctoring up the baseball. And so when that happens, you're suspended and you have to go visit the commissioner, who at the time was the very regal Bowie Kuhn. And he goes to New York and he goes in the commissioner's office and Bowie Kuhn says, George, I understand you've been putting foreign substances on the ball. And George Fraser said, no, sir. Everything I put on the ball is made right here in the good old USA.
There's some great stories of Bowie Kuhn, like Bill the Spaceman Lee, where he said in an interview that he used marijuana, which at the time was like just total scandal. So they want to suspend him and they call him into Bowie Kuhn's office. Bill Lee is sitting there and he's saying, well, we really discourage drug use. There are kids out there and he's just reaming them out. And Bill Lee says, no. I said I used marijuana. I didn't say I smoked it. I use it to flavor my buckwheat pancakes. And Bowie Kuhn has a press conference and announces he's not suspending them and relays that story to everyone.
Alice B. Tokless brownies. Yes.
That's right.
That is really.
Listen, guys, I do have to go. I think I've missed some things, but I will get involved. But thank you for having me, and I do appreciate it.
Let's give
You're
a
welcome, Thomas.
virtual
Thank
round
you,
of applause.
Thomas.
You guys a virtual round of applause, and may I see you in person soon.
Okay. Thank you so much.
Thomas.
Really appreciate it, Thomas.
Thanks,
Thank you.
Thomas.
very much.
All
Thanks,
right.
Thomas.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, that was really good. And, Thomas never disappoints. I see that we have been joined by Mr. Scott Carter of the SABR National Office, and he has requested a few minutes to discuss something that is coming up in the SABR virtual world. So hello, Scott. And,
Hey, Paul.
And take it away.
Well, I hope all of you are well wherever you may be. Thanks for letting me join you for a few minutes. I promise to be very brief. So if you noticed last week, we actually just opened up registration for our Summer of SABR Golden Celebration Series. So this is essentially going to be I wouldn't call it a replacement for our in-person convention, but in lieu of our in-person convention, we've announced a series of virtual sessions that are going to be fantastic and really kind of explore the breadth and depth of SABR's baseball community. So there are 3 different months that we have things going on. So the first month will be in June. So June 25, 26th, and 27th, there'll be a session each of those days. And then in July, we'll have 3 more weekend sessions. So July 23rd, 24th, and 25th. And then in August, we'll have 3 more sessions. One of those will be August 10th, which is actually the 50th, the exact date 50 years ago that SABR was founded. So it'll be our actual 50th birthday on August 10th, and then finishing up that weekend on August 13th and 14th. So the cool thing about all of these virtual events, and they're all going to explore something different. So from, in June, it'll be, the first session will be focused on the future of the game. The second session will be more of our annual business meeting and kind of a social hour for SABR members to get together from across the country. And then the last June session will be about international baseball. So we've got a great panel of folks that are representing the Olympic qualified teams, some of the Caribbean Association. So it'll be a lot of fun just starting off in June. And then in July, it's the entire Jerry Malloy Negro League Conference is going to take the July slot. So the great thing about this is there's only one registration price for SABR members for the entire 9 events. So it's $35 for SABR members, $50 for non-members. And if you register, like I said, you get all 9 sessions for the price of one. So if you say you can't make it in July, you're going to be on vacation, it's okay. We'll get you video after the fact, like we do with most of our virtual events, but you're registered for all of them. So there's just one register. You don't have to register for individual events. So you can go to sabr.org/summer, which I will put in the chat for everybody to visit. You can register there and kind of get a lay of the land of the entire program. And the last thing that I will mention is Chanel Zapata, who's our community engagement manager, emailed you guys' chapter leaders last week. We're doing a cool competition between chapters. So the chapter that there's going to be 2 winners. The chapter that has the most total registrants for the Summer of SABR series, and also the chapter with the highest percentage of their membership who register, because we know that some chapters are a little bit smaller. Both of those 2 winners are going to win a fully catered lunch for a future in-person event for your chapter. So we know everybody's looking forward to getting back together at some point soon, but we wanted to put a little caveat, a little carrot out there for everybody to encourage their chapter members to sign up. So keep an eye out for a standings update on that. I know we've already got a bunch of Rocky Mountain member folks that have signed up, but just a little bit of encouragement to join us for the summer celebration. That's all I got. I know I talked fast. I'll put the link in the chat so everybody can check it out. But if you have any questions, feel free to fire them at us.
Well, thank you, Scott. Actually, one thing that I want to mention to you that we discussed before you got on at the beginning of our call here was that we are actually, you mentioned we're all looking forward to getting back in person. Rocky Mountain is getting back in person next month in June. We're focused on Thursday, June 17th. It's been about a year and a quarter since we have seen each other in 3 dimensions. And so I don't know if I should tell you or maybe just email Chanel, but I'd like to see our in-person lunch for June 17th get on all the national SABR lists, because I saw one today or yesterday and we weren't on there yet. June 17th.
Yeah, make sure Chanel has it, and make sure Chanel has it, and we'll make sure it gets on the calendar. But that's exciting for you guys, and hopefully everybody's excited to see each other. And I know we're all getting to that point where it's becoming more of a reality for a lot of us.
The restaurant where we have it has gotten the green light to have 100% capacity without, and if you're vaccinated, it's honor system, but if you're vaccinated, no masks and no distancing. So we're still going to, honor and respect everybody's comfort level in terms of joining large gatherings. We understand that it's an ongoing and ever evolving world we live in, but we're pretty excited about that.
That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Well, guys and gals, have a fantastic rest of your meeting. Let me know if there's anything we can do for y'all. Have a fantastic day, and hopefully we see you guys at the Summer of SABR event.
Thank you, Scott.
Take care, guys.
All right. Okay.
We're going to win. We're going to win because we have the best chapter. It's Nicolette. We rule. We're winning.
Okay. All right. Would anybody like to counter that with we're going to lose? Or Okay.
I still welcome the cane, so be careful if you counter.
You people from the Bronx don't scare me. Okay. So, does anybody else have anything for the good of the chapter? Okay.
Paul, any thoughts on the All-Star game? Any updates?
Oh, boy. I met with Jim Kellogg of the Rockies. It's been a month now. And I said we were seeking, this is after a discussion with Scott Bush, the CEO of SABR, about possible volunteer opportunities. And I was assured that we'd be hearing from the Rockies regarding that subject. And a month has passed. And of course, we were already dealing with a very compressed window of planning and preparation. But I have not heard back. But yesterday, when I was watching the game, I noticed they put up a what do they call those? A public service announcement or something. In between innings, they put it up about volunteer opportunities, and they had a phone number on the screen. So perhaps they're filtering it through that general volunteer entity. So, but the Rockies have not gotten back to Rocky Mountain SABR in terms of specific volunteer opportunities. It might be that they do. Sometimes I know that they can, rush through something to do something more last minute and rush through it. So, but in terms of having information, that's all we got.
Paul, I got an email about volunteering at FanFest.
Who did you get it from?
MLB, I think it was. I don't know. This thing popped up and said, would you be interested in, being mobbed by people trying to get into the All-Star game, basically? And I thought, no, I get run over all the time. And the idea of being near a photograph with a player sort of scares me. So I don't know if anybody's gotten other things, but I know a couple of my colleagues have gotten them that are Colorado people, Mary Francis. And
you said that this is coming from you. This email came from.
Because it looked like
Yeah,
that's what
it's MLB. I've been getting a number of them as well.
Yeah,
Okay.
thank you, Kurt, because I got a couple of them. I was just wondering.
Well, you know what? I find that a little intriguing because before I even reached out to the Rockies, I started with our CEO, Scott Bush, about this subject, about volunteers opportunities, since we're the SABR chapter in the city where the All-Star game is going to be. And Scott then reached out to his connection with MLB and got a kind of a tepid response, saying, well, we'll let you know if anything, if we need any help along those lines. So I'm trying to get a sense of this. I'm hearing a kind of some, conflicting information, and it might, and I'll explore it further, but I imagine I'm thinking based on what you guys are saying about getting MLB emails directly and about the blurb they put up on the screen yesterday. Maybe that's how this thing gets channeled, not officially through the chapter, but they just open it up to.
I got mine as a season ticket holder. I think they sent them out to all season ticket holders.
Okay, that's a good little piece of information, because that tells me that they didn't just focus on SABR members per se.
Well, I even got mine from the Evil Empire ticket holder.
Oh no.
Yeah,
And
I got it from
the Denver Sports Commission for volunteering for the All-Star game.
I'm sorry, Chris, can you say that again, please?
I also got a few emails a few weeks ago from the Denver Sports Commission for volunteering for the All-Star game and the events that surround the All-Star game.
Okay, I'm really, really glad we're having this conversation, because this is telling me that they've decided to go in a kind of a global approach to this and just open it up to everybody. And I think, just based on my experience from 1998, it's a difficult thing because of how this unfolded. The the planning process has been compressed from 2 years down to 3 months because of the relocation of the All-Star site. So perhaps they think that this might be the quickest, most effective way to build a volunteer force, if you will. But coming from all these other sources tells me that they're not going to be terribly focused on SABR per se. And my next call is going to be back to Scott Bush to see what else might be going on here. So that's rather enlightening. So David, I hope was you that asked the question? Yeah. Okay. So that's a lot of information we just gathered there. So very interesting. I will circle back, and if there's anything meaningful to let you guys know about any kind of volunteer opportunities through the chapter, we'll get out a membership statement through Alex and let you know what's going on and what might be happening.
Thanks, Paul. Thank you, Paul.
Welcome. Anybody else have anything? Does anybody want to be the Rockies GM, next GM? Right, show of hands. Alex,
Sure.
come on. Alex. Okay. Well, everybody, thank you so much for joining us today. I hope you enjoyed Thomas Harding. He is always, I always find him to be a very insightful commentator on the baseball scene. So with that, I will wish everybody a very happy Memorial Day holiday. Please stay safe and stay well. Okay.
Same to you, Paul. Thanks.
Thank you.
Another great meeting.
Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.